Hi all, welcome to my show, Unfolding the Tech. My name is Vivek and I work at Google. I'm sitting down with the Google technologists and enterprise customers to talk about their experiences with Google Cloud and the impact they have been able to make in their businesses. Hi all, welcome to another episode of Unfolding the Tech. Now it's time for today's special guest. He was born in North London and lived in London for most of his life before relocating to Silicon Valley in California to pursue his passion for technology and social change. Welcome, Marcus East. Hi Marcus, welcome to the show.
Vivek, hi, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Amazing, thanks for making time. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about your background in the tech industry?
Absolutely, yes. I sometimes joke that my career has two distinct halves to it, or two distinct parts, in that nearly half of my career has been working for major tech companies. So I started my career in IBM 26 years ago as a systems analyst working on missile defense systems and big iron. And I spent 6 years there and had a wonderful time. But during that time, I learned a lot about e-business. And so I also, a little bit later on, spent 4 years at Apple, where I ran the e-commerce solutions team, which is the team that was responsible for building much of the technology that supports Apple's online business. And now I'm at Google. So half my career, over 10 years, has been in tech companies. But the other half of my career has been in consumer-facing brands, where I've been an executive helping the organization to get to grips with technology. So, for example, I was the Chief Digital Officer at Marks & Spencer, which is one of the biggest retailers in the UK. And immediately before coming to Google, I was the Chief Technology Officer at National Geographic.
Wonderful. Thanks for coming to our show, Marcus.
It's a pleasure.
All right. Okay, viewers. So to get started, our topic for today, as you know, is about digital transformations. We're going to learn a lot of what this buzzword is from Marcus East today. So Marcus, you're up for the task?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. So what does it mean, or how do you define digital transformation?
Yeah, this is in some respects the $64 million question, in that there's lots of discussion and debate about this. I define digital transformation as the use of new digital and internet-based technologies to re-engineer the relationship between an organization and its key stakeholders, whether they be employees, customers, or partners. And the beauty of that definition is it's really about the business impact of the use of that technology. And that's one of the reasons that I think it's very important that we talk to our customers about digital transformation, because it's one of the ways in which technology is being seen to very clearly deliver strong return on investment for companies that embrace it.
I think this is the first time I've heard such a concise definition of digital transformation.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we're recording this.
So, a lot of companies are talking about digital transformation for many years. Why do you think it is important for us to talk to customers about it, and why now?
Yeah, great question. One of the reasons is that the data tells us that it's important to do so. So each year for the last 22 years, KPMG and Harvey Nash have done something called the CIO survey. And that survey talks to thousands of CIOs and CTOs around the world and asks them to share information about their budgets and their operations. In 2019, for the last published version of the CIO survey, there was quite an interesting statistic that was shared. And what it was that for those organizations who saw budget increases, about 45% of them, so nearly half, were getting an increased IT budget because of digital transformation. And that was coming directly from the board. So we're working in a scenario whereby some of the key stakeholders that we embrace, CIOs and CTOs, are actually for the first time getting really clear indications from their boards that they want them to be spending more money on technology, but only if it relates to driving true business value and driving digital transformation. And that's a conversation that we have to be in.
Right, and why do you think it's important now? Is COVID-19 has to do something with it?
I think that there are all sorts of reasons that digital transformation has been, I guess, picking up traction, picking up speed. COVID-19 is probably one of them, in that we know that organizations that didn't embrace digital transformation and don't have, for example, the ability to communicate with partners and customers easily electronically, they're really struggling at a time when clearly we're all at home and not traveling much. So COVID-19 has had a big impact, but I do think that it's just accelerating what we would have seen typically anyway. One of the customers that I work with very closely, PwC, one of their executives told me a couple of weeks ago that she believed that there was a sort of corporate Darwinism that we were going to see, in that some organizations were going to thrive in this world because they've been flexible, they've adapted the cloud, they've basically understood how to build flexible systems, and they would be able to grow and they'd be able to survive this difficult time. And those organizations who didn't, perhaps who stuck to having their own data centers, who didn't embrace building new functionality out there in the cloud or on the web, they're the ones that are going to struggle. So that, I think, means that COVID-19 is an accelerator, it's a catalyst, but these were winds that were always blowing.
I think well said. I think it's extremely important. So now that we have established that digital transformation is not an option anymore for the organization to succeed in this world today, so what are the key factors in successful digital transformation for the organizations?
Yeah, so one of the things that my experience has taught me, and my experience of working with many different organizations around the world, helping them with this space, is that it's not just about the technology. And I talk sometimes about there being 6 elements to successful digital transformation. And technology is the first, it's the foundation. So I say that flexible technology is the most critical thing if you're going to embrace digital transformation. But that's not where you get the value. That's just what you build your capabilities on. The next thing that I think is really important is a culture of experimentation. And it's this idea that the companies who are most receptive to building and testing new product ideas and getting them quickly out there to the marketplace are the ones who are demonstrating that they're able to drive more digital transformation. So experimentation is key, and organizations that have got very long product development cycles and like to spend months doing testing before they launch them, they struggle sometimes in a world where things have to move really quickly. The next thing, building on experimentation, is this idea of measurement. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is having the right OKRs or KPIs. And I've seen many times in my career that organizations allow themselves to be seduced by vanity metrics. And so instead of actually focusing on the important business impacting KPIs and OKRs, they're instead looking at things like traffic or number of viewers that don't translate directly into business. So the other thing that I've seen through the research that I've done is that companies that have a really strong culture of measuring, accurately measuring the key statistics that drive their business, are also very successful at digital transformation. So you've got the technology, you've got experimentation, you then have the ability to measure on top of that. The next thing that I see as being really critically important is this idea of what I call extreme collaboration. In that the other thing that digital transformation often necessitates for companies is the need to go beyond their normal organizational boundaries. So you need to start thinking not about how your company's structured, but you need to start thinking about what your customers' needs are. And for that reason, organizations that have embraced collaborative tools like G Suite, they also find it much easier to drive digital transformation. And I think that collaboration's a very important part of that. Next would be agility. And agility for me is really the ability for an organization to properly handle, manage, and thrive in a world of change. And organizations that can do that clearly are in a much better position to survive what we're seeing with COVID-19, for example. But the final thing that my research showed me might surprise you, in that number of times I've asked CTOs and CIOs and CEOs, what do they think is the 6th thing that I believe is critical for digital transformation? And never once has anybody identified what it is. And I'm going to tell you, it is organizations that are incredibly focused on delivering value and solving problems for their customers. And I believe that a way of describing that is those companies and organizations that think of their customers as their king or their queen, they're the ones, when they have all of these other factors in place, that have been able to drive successful digital transformation.
Amazing. So hearing you talk for 2 minutes, I at least gathered the 3 important things that I will always remember in my conversations. Okay, the measurement, the KPIs. I think I come from consulting background, and I work with many organizations. They just buy technology because somebody else is buying it, yes. Without really putting thoughts into what KPIs and what measurement are they driving towards. What are they trying to solve? Collaboration, another one, right? People build the same thing again and again, over and over again, without really using what's being there and talking to each other through collaborative tools like G Suite. And finally, actually solving for customers versus solving a technology problem. So amazing. So here, I have a very important question for you. I know you're writing a book. I know it's a secret, but I know you're writing a book about digital transformation. So can you tell our viewers what is it actually called, and when can we get our hands on it?
Yeah, so my book is called Working with Dinosaurs, and it should be out just before the end of the year. I'm actually doing a little bit of editing and rewriting to really increase the focus on using the cloud as a way of driving digital transformation. And it's based not only on my own experience of having worked in this space for 25 years now, but I also surveyed about 2,500 business professionals across the UK and Europe, the US and Europe, to ask them about exactly what they thought were the inhibitors to them being successful in digital transformation. And some of the insights that I revealed were quite insightful. For example, I discovered that organizations that have a CIO or a CTO that reports to the CEO are typically going to outperform organizations who don't have a CIO or CTO reporting to the CEO. And that's also backed up by the Harvey Nash study. So there's some really interesting things that I think as we're out there talking to customers, we should be thinking about in terms of the journey that they're going through.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, we talked about digital transformation. Why is it important? What should organization be considering? What are the 6 key principles that they're looking at? So we both work for Google, right? Mm-hmm. So how can Google best help organizations who are attempting to drive digital transformation within their enterprise? What can we do?
Yeah, great question. Look, it might surprise you to hear me answer in this way. Our technology leadership in many fields is undisputed. Data analytics, machine learning, people just do not dispute that. Interestingly, much of the work that we do in the office of the CTO is building on that technology foundation, but also looking at some of the other aspects that are important. One of the things that many CIOs talk to me about, for example, is culture. How do I develop a culture that is more innovative, that can embrace the cloud, and that has the ability to move more quickly? And whether you have a huge, big tech budget or not, if you don't have a culture that can actually adapt to the changes needed, then you've got real problems. I think the other way in which Google can help, and I should say that Google can help because Google's culture is exactly the kind of culture that these organizations would like to replicate or at least be inspired by. And so yes, they spend a lot of time talking to us about technology, but they're also interested in talking about how does Google do things? How would Google approach this problem? That's one of the things that I hear quite a lot from customers. And it can be for them very insightful. Even if they're not quite ready to do things in the same way, just knowing what Google would have done can be a really powerful experience for them.
Now, amazing. I think that's extremely important, right? People go after technology, but what the impediment is the culture to accept what they're trying to do. So absolutely, we definitely can help with that. I'm sure after this podcast, I'm gonna get a lot of calls to get in touch with you. I'm sure about that.
Very happy to help.
Thank you so much. So Marcus, I think we are towards the end of our show today, and I want to see what are your closing comments for our customers that are looking to find out step number 1, what they should do in their journey to digital transformation. Yeah,
this is the thing that many of them struggle with. How do they get started? And I have to, in fact, have two parts to my answer. The first is having a true understanding of how you can deliver value to your customers. And it goes back to what I said before about the 6 principles. So you've got to do the research, really deeply understand your consumers' wants and needs. For example, at National Geographic, we really believed that, and we embraced a methodology called the Jobs to be Done framework, which it came out of academia, but it's a very thorough methodology around looking at the actual needs of your customer and making them distinct from your product features. And by doing that, you can start to think about ways in which your business can actually deliver value to them. Once you've got that understanding of what your customers need, I think one of the most important things is to have a really clear vision for your digital transformation. And that vision needs to be a combination of where you're trying to get to. You know, we want to be the #1 company in our sector in all markets, for example, but also the KPIs that are going to confirm to everybody that you're there. Because, you know, without wanting to sound like a stuck record, the number of times I've seen organizations who've embraced on big programs but who don't have clear KPIs fail has been alarming. And those organizations with the strongest, clearest KPIs seem to be the ones that are much better at organizing their resources and their efforts.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marcus, and thanks for your time. It was fun talking to you. And I'm sure I'm going to reach out to you, have a separate conversation, not for our viewers, but amazing talking to you. Thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and everybody keep safe.
Thank you guys, and stay safe and stay tuned until next time. Bye.